Hi everyone, my name is Charlie Veach and I have to do a video about Mark Duggan, the jury result that he was lawfully killed, the London riots in 2011, but above all, a major story here that I want to talk about alienation and a sectarianizing of society between law-abiding, or people who obey the law, citizens, and an underworld of people who cannot use the law to protect their interests. And I speak obviously of drug dealers, hard drug dealers, gun dealers, people who deal weapons, people smugglers, other nefarious activities that if you're ripped off, you can't phone the police. You can't say, hey, some guy stole £50,000 worth of ecstasy tablets from my garage, come and arrest them. And people like Mark Duggan, because of this fact, because they live in an underworld where they cannot use the law to protect their interests, they arm themselves with pistols and machine guns, submachine guns, grenades, blades, machetes, knives. And we have a very sad situation. And for the international audience who don't know very much about this, I'll give you a very quick rundown, a very quick intro. Mark Duggan was a 26-year-old young man in London who was shot dead by an armed response police team in 2011 in Tottenham, which is in North London. And after the police shot this man dead, there were many days of the most vicious rioting in Britain for a generation since the Brixton riots in the early 80s. Birmingham was rioting, Manchester was rioting, there are several locations throughout London. The police totally lost control of key parts of the city. They had to pull back because they were scared of being shot by other armed gangsters, or just armed people. Whether they were gangsters or not, we can only assume. But London burned, Manchester burned where I live here. It was all burning, everyone looting and smashing up shops, people being beaten like dogs in the street to within an inch of their lives. Some Asian brothers got run over and killed in the madness, and hundreds of police got injured. It's an ugly story. People's businesses, lifelong businesses getting burnt down, and so many commentators arguing whether this was a political reaction or a criminal reaction, and you know, that's a different story. Anyway, the story of Mark Duggan. A jury inquest, a jury trial, found the police killing was lawful, as opposed to Princess Diana, which was an unlawful killing. The inquest found it was the paparazzi chasing her Mercedes that killed her. The jury of 10 average Joes and Janes, in the jury. This wasn't lords and ladies and dukes and duchesses. This was 10 ordinary people who found the evidence towards a lawful killing of Mark Duggan. And because of this, the entire family of the Duggans are very upset, and they're doing big vigils outside the police station. They interrupted the police statement at the High Court. They're quite rightly in the news a lot. I mean, I don't know what it's like to lose a close family member, much less lose a close family member to a bullet by a Metropolitan Police officer. But to separate all the hysteria, we need to, as I said, we need to contract this fractal down. We need to bring it down to basics. And let's look at a few basic facts here. Mark Duggan had 6 children. 6 little human beings, his children, that depended on him as a daddy, as a father, as a provider. Mark Duggan was in good health. He lived in London, one of the big global cities of the world, where the streets aren't literally paved with gold, but there's a lot of money, there's a lot of jobs, there's a lot of startups, there's a lot of entrepreneurship, there's a lot of people needing people to do things. I was unemployed in London for a few days, and an Irish friend of mine said, hey Charlie, do you want to earn £100 a day tax-free clearing out houses? I said, well yeah. And we got to clear out houses in Kensington for £100 a day, and that was, you know, there's always work. And I speak as a father. I have one amazing 1-year-old boy and another one on the way. My partner's pregnant. Hooray, more babies! And I know the emotions of being a father, of having young children, that you suddenly realize that it's quite important that you stay alive. It's quite important that you're there for your kids, that you see them grow up, that they feel loved and nurtured, and they have daddy and mummy there. And Mark Duggan had 6 kids. And he still chose a life of violence, a life by the gun. He chose the way of the gun, the way of the sword. He was living by the sword, having 6 children to depend on him. And one thing is quite likely is that if you never deal in weapons, if you don't carry a knife or a gun, if there's no intelligence of you wanting a knife or a gun, you're probably not going to be pulled over by an armed response team and then shot. And like, look, there's so much hysteria, there's so much partisanship in making a video like this that I know a lot of my viewers are going, ah, fuck you, Charlie, fuck the police, you know, how dare they shoot this innocent guy. And yeah, fair enough, look, in the inquest, he wasn't holding a gun at the time. He had a gun in the car and then he threw it over a fence or something, and so he wasn't armed. But those police officers, because, you know, he got pulled over by armed police, why did Mark Duggan come running out of the car? What was he doing, trying to get away? Was he running towards police officers? If it is a big game, if you get pulled over by a bunch of armed British cops, you've lost the game. Just sit still, just put your hands up. But my biggest condemnation here has to be for the choice of Mark Duggan. That you got 6 young children, 6 children that depend on you, and you stay in a life of drugs and violence and guns, and you go to pick up guns from people to the point where you're getting shot dead in the street. The true battle of all of us is an inner battle of the human spirit, of staying positive when everyone around you is going insane, of staying righteous, of keeping that flame in your heart alive. And when you got young children, stay away from the crack cocaine and the guns. That's all I have to say. So it's always unfortunate, but one thing is positive about this, and as a man who films all my street exploits, I support this. There's a big call now for the British police to always be wearing, especially the armed police, to always be wearing cameras, so that we can all see what happens, we can all see the response, and it'll stop a lot of confusion. Anyway, this is Charlie Veach. Thank you again for listening to me. The reason I was filming outside this jewelry store is because it's the greed for shiny objects, diamonds, watches, status. It's the greed for status that drives young men like Mark Duggan to become gangsters.